Greetings from the Jazz Cloud. I'm Richie Zellin, and I'd like to welcome you to another lesson on the Jazz Guitar Channel. Today I want to cover a topic I often get asked about: how and what to practice. And I believe this is a broad conceptual topic that every player can learn from. And because it's so broad, I'm making it a three-part series. Throughout these lessons, I'm not going to just give you my personal practice tips, but instead those of many great jazz musicians I admire. And I'm sure some of you might ask, well, Richie, how do you know what the great jazz musicians practice? Well, for starters, through the years I have read several autobiographies, as well as numerous interviews where they discuss their practice routines. But better yet, I have had the good fortune to apprentice with several of the masters by studying, playing, and hanging out with them. As a result, today I'd like to share the first of 5 practice habits that I learned many great jazz musicians have in common. And I'm devoting an entire video to this first habit because it is the foundation for all the remaining habits. So without further ado, habit number 1. Great jazz musicians push the envelope. In other words, they practice what they're not comfortable with. They don't stay in their comfort zone. When the greats practice, they do so to take their playing to the next level. On the other hand, those that simply practice what they already know are in essence just reviewing. I like to call it maintenance. Of course, there is nothing wrong with this, and some of us need to reserve a portion of our practice session for this. But this isn't always the case with most great musicians who are performing several nights a week, which in turn takes care of that maintenance. So please note that performing is not a substitute for practice. Again, that's because during solitary practice, great musicians work on something that they feel they yet have to master. But no matter what, they all set out to master whatever they want to accomplish through a procedure known as deliberate practice. The Oxford Dictionary, if I recall correctly, defines deliberate as something done consciously and intentionally. And the term deliberate practice was coined by psychologist Anders Ericsson, who interviewed hundreds of virtuoso musicians to understand their practice habits. He then did the same with a similar quantity of ordinary professional musicians. And what he discovered is that ordinary musicians engage in what he calls purposeful practice. He goes on to explain that purposeful practice consists of a routine, if you will, that will make you just good enough to accomplish your goal. In this view, everything you do is to reach a fixed potential. However, once you reached it, you stop getting better. On the other hand, with deliberate practice, the goal is not just to reach your potential, but to build it, to make things possible that were not possible before. Deliberate practice nearly always involves building or modifying previously acquired skills and working to improve them, which over time leads to expert performance. And Ericsson explains that one of the key elements to accomplish deliberate practice is to develop more efficient mental representations. As an example, he cites a visual image. Take the Mona Lisa, for example. Upon mentioning it, many people will immediately see an image of it in their minds. However, some people's mental representations will be more accurate and detailed. The more you study a subject, the more detailed your mental representations of it become, and the better you get at assimilating new information. And Ericsson goes on to say that a hallmark of expert performance is the ability to see patterns in a collection of things that would seem random or confusing to people with less developed mental representations. In other words, experts see the forest or the big picture while everyone else sees only trees. As a result, better mental representations lead to better performance. So, before moving on, for an example of a musician with a highly advanced mental representation of music, let's take Beethoven. When he wrote and premiered his Ninth Symphony, he was actually deaf. In spite of that, it was a smashing success. He knew exactly how it should sound, and in spite of being deaf, he was able to conduct it thanks to his detailed mental representation. And I know I've talked a lot about this first habit, but that's because the concept of deliberate practice serves as the foundation for all the remaining habits. And on that note, we conclude part 1. In part 2, I am going to talk about how great musicians make use of transcriptions during their practice time, and I will be picking up the guitar to demonstrate how they might dissect a transcription and practice it. So be on the lookout for it next week. I hope you have enjoyed this first part, and as usual, I thank you for your likes and comments, and I look forward to being back real soon. Until then, stay safe, practice, 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 and may peace be with you.